We are about to really unpack something that impacts pretty much everything we do, the power of our habits.
Hmm.
And today we're drawing our insights from some really fascinating excerpts of the book Atomic Habits.
Yeah, and the core idea is powerful, isn't it? How these incredibly small, consistent actions can actually stack up.
Totally. They can create truly massive change.
It seems almost too simple sometimes.
Well, the author kicks things off with this very compelling personal story. He had this severe injury, ended up in a medically induced coma,
Wow.
and faced this really long, painstaking recovery. And the point he makes is it wasn't some sudden miracle cure.
No quick fix.
Exactly. It was gradual, step by step, focusing on these tiny daily improvements. And he says that same philosophy, small wins and tiny breakthroughs. That's what he applied later to starting his business, even writing this very book. It all started small, just like rebuilding his life did.
That personal story really sets the stage perfectly, I think. And our mission here in this deep dive, really guided only by the source material you shared, is to get straight to the most important insights, the practical strategies for building better habits. We want to, cut through the noise.
Get to the core.
Yeah, give you that core knowledge quickly so you can actually use it in your own life. That's the goal.
Okay, let's jump right into the foundation then. There's this really striking idea from the text. Simply put, you get what you repeat.
Mm-hmm. Simple but deep.
Yeah. It describes things like, say, your finances, your weight, your knowledge, even the clutter in your home, not as these inherent problems, but as lagging measures.
Lagging measures. I like that. So they're just delayed results.
Exactly. Indicators of the habits you've been practicing consistently day in, day out.
And what's absolutely crucial to grasp here, the text emphasizes, is the role of time. Time isn't just passing.
It's magnifying things.
It magnifies the difference those small daily choices make.
Right.
Think about it. Those tiny gains or tiny losses you make today,
Yeah.
compounded over, say, 10 or 20 years,
Yeah.
they create this enormous gap down the line.
Yeah.
So you have to ask yourself, are you consistently spending less than you earn?
Or making time for the gym, reading.
Exactly. The text argues these seemingly minor daily choices are actively constructing the future you. Your future self is being built right now.
But here's the tricky part, right? And I think this is where a lot of people get frustrated, and the text just nails it. It talks about the valley of disappointment.
Oh, yeah. And the plateau of latent potential.
Yes, you start working hard, you're doing all the right things, but you don't see the results immediately. It feels like absolutely nothing is happening.
It's so discouraging.
Totally. And the author's analogy is just perfect. He says it's like heating an ice cube from, say, 25 degrees Celsius up to 31 degrees.
Okay.
You're putting in the energy, you're doing the work, but you see zero visible change, right? The ice hasn't melted.
But it's still ice.
But that work isn't wasted. That's the key. It's being stored. All the dramatic visible change happens suddenly at 32 degrees.
Exactly. And this really helps us understand those overnight successes we always hear about.
Right. They seem to come out of nowhere.
But the text points out they've usually just broken through this exact plateau. It comes after a long period where their progress was, well, invisible or minimal to the outside world.
So the breakthrough looks sudden.
But it's actually the result of all that consistent work done way back when it felt boring or maybe even pointless. It's like tectonic plates building pressure for years and years.
Before the earthquake finally hit.
Precisely. The energy isn't lost, it's just accumulating beneath the surface.
So it feels natural then to focus on the goal. I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to run a marathon. That's the target.
That's the outcome, yeah.
But the text makes a really strong case for shifting focus, for focusing on systems instead.
Systems, not just goals.
Okay. Yeah. The argument is the problem isn't usually the results you're getting. It's the underlying systems that are producing those results.
Okay. So if we only try to fix things at the results level,
Oh.
say crash dieting,
Right.
the improvement is probably just temporary. To create lasting change, the text says you have to fix the inputs,
The system itself.
the system itself. And when you optimize the system, the outputs, the results, they'll naturally get better.
That makes sense.
And there's another potential downside the text highlights about being too goal-focused. It can kind of restrict your happiness.
How so?
Well, the implicit idea is often, once I achieve X goal, then I'll finally be happy.
Right. Happiness is deferred.
Exactly. It defers happiness, and it sets up this kind of either scenario. You either succeed or you fail, and your whole well-being gets tied to hitting that specific target.
That shift from outcome to process, it really resonates. But the text goes even deeper, doesn't it, into why habits are so fundamental. It points towards identity.
Yes. This might be the most profound insight in the excerpts we looked at. Your behaviors are deeply, deeply intertwined with your identity.
How does that work?
Well, what you do consistently is a powerful signal, both to yourself and others, about the kind of person you believe you are.
Whether you realize it or not.
Whether that belief is conscious or non-conscious, yeah. And when your actions align with your self-image, doing the right thing, whatever that is for you, feels almost easy, effortless even.
Because you're just being yourself.
You're not battling yourself.
Yeah.
You're simply acting in accordance with who you already believe you are. The text gives that great example, contrasting voting, which is just an action,
With being a voter.
which is an identity. It's
Cool.
a subtle but powerful shift.
And there's a feedback loop there, isn't there? Habits shape identity. Identity shapes habits.
Exactly. It goes both ways. It's dynamic, which is why the text calls identity change the true North Star of lasting habit change. You aim for the identity first.
Okay, this is fascinating. So let's get into the mechanics. How does this whole habit thing actually work inside our brains? The text breaks it down into a really clear 4-step pattern.
Right. This is the operating manual for basically every habit we have.
Yeah.
Cue, craving, response, and reward. Your brain runs through this loop every single time a habit gets triggered.
Okay, step 1. The cue.
So the cue is the trigger. It's that little bit of information that predicts a reward is coming. You know, for our ancestors, it might have been spotting berries or seeing a predator.
It's survival stuff.
Exactly. Today, it's cues for things like money, fame, social approval, satisfaction, relief. Your mind is constantly scanning the environment for these cues.
Mostly unconsciously.
Increasingly so with practice, yes. It learns to pick them up without you even having to think about it.
Okay, so the cue predicts a reward. Then comes the craving.
That's the motivational engine. It's not just wanting the reward itself, it's the anticipation of it. The text really emphasizes this. Your brain is essentially a reward detection machine.
And dopamine is involved here.
Huge role. But crucially, dopamine is released not just when you get the reward, but significantly during the moments of anticipation. That anticipation, that craving, is what truly drives your motivation to act.
So if the craving isn't strong enough,
You just won't have the drive to act. No motivation.
which leads you hopefully to the response.
The response is the actual behavior, performing the habit itself, whether it's checking your phone or going for a run. But this step is critical because if the behavior is too difficult,
Too much friction.
exactly, too complex, requires too much effort right then,
Yeah,
you simply won't do it consistently enough for it to become an ingrained habit.
makes sense. And finally, the payoff. The reward.
The reward does two things. First, it satisfies that initial craving, and second, it closes the feedback loop. It essentially teaches your brain, hey, that action was valuable. Remember it, do it again.
And if the reward doesn't satisfy the craving,
Then the text is clear.
right,
There's no positive signal sent back. There's no reason for the brain to flag that action as worth repeating. The habit won't stick.
so the whole loop needs all 4 parts working effectively.
Absolutely. If any one of those steps is weak or missing no cue, weak craving, difficult response, unsatisfying reward, the behavior just won't become a robust, automatic habit.
It's actually kind of unsettling when the text points out how once habits become automatic, we basically stop paying attention to them.
Oh, completely. They fade into the non-conscious.
We just run on autopilot.
We do.
Yeah.
Think about those examples mentioned, the retired teacher still asking kids if they wash their hands, the former lifeguard yelling, walk at the pool years later.
Their brains are running old programs.
Triggered by cues they're not even consciously processing anymore. The treats on the kitchen counter, the TV remote always in the same spot, the phone vibrating in your pocket,
These cues become almost invisible.
because our response is so automatic. It reminds you of that quote the text uses from Carl Jung. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate.
Wow, that's powerful.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it highlights why awareness is absolutely the essential first step. You can't change what you don't even realize is happening.
Okay, so if awareness is the starting point, how do we actually, shine a light on these unconscious habits and the cues that trigger them?
Well, the text offers some practical tools. One really simple one is the habit scorecard.
What's that?
You just literally make a list of your daily habits, getting coffee, checking email, scrolling social media, brushing teeth, and then you mark each one as positive, negative, or neutral in terms of moving you toward the person you want to become.
Just making it visible.
Exactly. Another fascinating technique mentioned is pointing and calling. Apparently it's used in the Japanese railway system.
Ping calling.
Yeah, operators physically point at signals or speedometers and verbally call out the status, like signal is green or speed is 75. It sounds simple, but it forces conscious awareness onto otherwise automatic checks.
Reducing errors by making things conscious.
Precisely. Both methods, the scorecard and pointing and calling, force you to acknowledge the habit loop as it's happening, pulling it out of the non-conscious.
Right, so once you're aware, once you see the habits, how do you start making the good ones easier to do? The text talks a lot about environment, right?
Oh, environment is huge. The text emphasizes this idea. Behavior isn't just about your personality or willpower. It's a function of the person in their environment. B equals FPE.
We're shaped by the world around us.
Constantly. Habits are incredibly context-dependent. So the big takeaway here is, if you want a habit to become a significant part of your life, make its cue a significant, obvious part of your environment.
Make the good choice the easy choice.
Make it the obvious choice. Think about why people grab the snacks left out on the counter, or why Starbucks ends up on so many corners. Visibility and accessibility make the choice effortless. You want to design your environment so the best choice is the most obvious one.
I really liked that concept from the text, the one space, one use idea.
Yeah, that's a great practical application.
Redefining or rearranging your physical space so that certain areas become strongly associated with specific habits, like the author separating his workspace from his relaxation space.
Avoid mixing contexts. Don't try to work on the couch where you watch TV, or don't keep your phone charging by your bed if you want to read more before sleep. Each space primes a different set of habits.
And this all ties into what the text calls the law of least effort, doesn't it?
Directly, we are fundamentally wired to conserve energy, to follow the path of least resistance. So good habits need to be low friction. Reduce the steps, reduce the effort involved.
Like examples from manufacturing or tech.
Exactly. The text mentions Japanese manufacturing's relentless focus on removing waste and friction. Or think about modern services, meal delivery, ride-sharing, dating apps. Their entire business model is built on removing friction from previously effortful actions.
Making things convenient.
Supremely convenient. And you can use technology this way too. Voice assistants, auto refills for prescriptions, website blockers for distractions. They design friction out of good habits or into bad ones. Like that old example of Patterson's redesigned cash register, making employee theft much harder, increased friction.
There's also the strategy of priming the environment. What was that about?
Ah, yes. That's about preparing your space in advance to make the next desired action easier.
Like setting out your gym clothes the night before.
Perfect example. Or like Oswald Knuckles, mentioned in the text, who apparently reset his entire workspace every evening so it was perfectly ready for him to start work immediately the next morning. It removes that initial barrier, that first bit of friction.
Got it. It's about handling these decisive moments better.
That's a key concept. These are like forks in the road that set the options available to your future self. Choosing to walk into a healthy grocery store versus a fast food place. Deciding to sit down at your desk versus collapsing on the couch after work.
Those small choices cascade.
They really do. Mastering these decisive moments is crucial because they dictate the path you're likely to follow next.
Okay, this is all great, but for someone feeling maybe a bit overwhelmed or just unsure where to even begin, what's the simplest, rock bottom entry point the text suggests?
Yeah, the ultimate low bar.
Yeah.
The 2-minute rule.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. The idea is when you're starting a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to actually perform.
Seriously, like what?
Like read one page instead of read a book, or take out my yoga mat instead of do a full hour of yoga, or meditate for 60 seconds.
It sounds almost trivial.
That's the point. It's a gateway habit. The goal is to make starting so ridiculously easy that you literally can't say no. The text stresses this idea. Standardize before you optimize.
Get the habit started first, worry about improving it later.
Exactly. Just show up. Master the art of showing up. Doing even a tiny amount consistently is infinitely better than having grand plans and doing nothing at all.
Okay, making habits obvious and easy, check. Now how about making them attractive? How do we make ourselves want to do them?
This taps into another really fundamental human drive, our need to belong. The text talks about the seductive pull of social norms.
We're herd animals.
Deep down, yes, we have this strong desire to fit in, to be accepted by our tribe. So we tend to imitate the habits of 3 key groups: the close, family, friends, the majority culture, and the powerful, those with status we admire.
So behaviors become attractive if they help us fit in.
Precisely. If the people around you are doing it, it seems like the normal, desirable thing to do. The text uses the example of the Polgar family, those chess prodigies.
Right, intense chess practice was just normal in their house.
It was the culture. Obsession was normal, attractive. And think about the anecdote about how many people start smoking, often through friends, to fit in. The behavior becomes attractive through social connection.
And Alan Carr's method for quitting smoking relates here too.
Yeah, because his method works partly by reframing the cues, by challenging the perceived attractiveness of smoking itself, revealing it as something unpleasant rather than sophisticated or rebellious.
Yeah.
You change the appeal.
So our mindset, how we think about the habit, plays a big role in its attractiveness.
A huge role. Reframing is key. Changing how you view a habit can fundamentally change how you feel about it.
Like the example of reframing pre-performance nerves.
Exactly. Seeing those jitters not as fear, but as excitement, as your body getting ready. The text is clear. This isn't some kind of magic trick, but shifting your interpretation can shift the underlying feeling. And as the text puts it, often the feeling comes first and then the behavior.
Your feelings drive the craving and the action.
And you can influence those feelings by consciously choosing how you frame the situation and the habit itself. Make the anticipation positive.
All right, last piece of the puzzle, making habits satisfying. This feels like the toughest one, especially when the real benefits of good habits are often way off in the future.
It absolutely is the biggest challenge, and the text explains why. Our brains are fundamentally built for the immediate return environment of our Paleolithic ancestors. Find food, eat now. See danger, run now.
Immediate cause and effect.
Right. But we live in a delayed return world now. The rewards for studying today come much later. The negative consequences of smoking or overeating are years down the road. But the pleasure, the hit of nicotine, the taste of the donut is immediate.
And instant gratification usually wins.
Almost always. Because, as the text notes, it's your present self making the decision in the moment, and your future self and its long-term goals feel abstract and distant. You can't just rely on good intentions or willpower against that immediate pull.
So how do you possibly bridge that gap? How do you make the long-term choice feel good now?
The suggestion is clever. You need to work with human nature, not against it. You do this by adding some kind of immediate reward or pleasure to your long-term habits, and maybe some immediate pain or cost to your bad ones.
Okay, give me an example.
Instead of just not eating out to save money, which feels like deprivation, maybe every time you cook at home instead, you immediately transfer $50 into a special savings account labeled Trip to Europe.
Ah, so you get an immediate hit of satisfaction seeing the fund grow.
Exactly. You get that little dopamine hit right away, reinforcing the good behavior, cooking at home, and linking it to the longer-term goal, the trip. The key, the text stresses, is that the short-term reward should reinforce your desired identity.
What do you mean?
Like getting a massage after a week of consistent workouts aligns with becoming a healthy, active person. Rewarding yourself with a giant tub of ice cream maybe sends a conflicting message.
Right, the reward shouldn't undermine the habit.
Ideally, yeah. And eventually, the text suggests the intrinsic rewards feeling better, having more energy, being more focused, will start to become satisfying in themselves. But you might need that immediate reinforcement early on.
And habit tracking fits in here too, right? Making it satisfying.
Oh, definitely. Tracking provides immediate visual proof of your progress. Seeing that streak build up on your calendar or app is incredibly satisfying.
Like crossing items off a to-do list.
Exactly that feeling. It motivates you because you don't want to break the chain. Breaking it feels immediately unsatisfying. The act of tracking itself can become its own little reward loop.
Okay, flipping it around then. How do you make bad habits immediately unsatisfying?
You need to engineer immediate consequences. Make them painful or costly in the moment, not just sometime in the future.
Like how?
The text strongly advocates for things like an accountability partner or even a formal habit contract.
A contract? Really?
Yeah, the examples are pretty striking, like Roger Fisher's slightly extreme idea about nuclear codes, or the author's own contract with his wife and trainer involving financial penalties and wearing a silly hat if he failed to meet his weight goals.
That sounds intense.
It is, but the principle is sound. Knowing someone else is watching, knowing you'll face immediate social judgment or a tangible penalty, that provides an immediate cost to indulging in the bad habit. It makes the choice painful right now.
You're not just letting yourself down, you're facing external consequences.
Exactly. That social pressure or financial stake can be a powerful immediate deterrent.
We've covered building habits pretty thoroughly. But what about choosing the right habits in the first place? Does the text touch on that, maybe related to genetics or talent?
It does, and it's an interesting perspective. The text frames genes not as some fixed destiny, but as determining your areas of opportunity.
So not locking you in, but suggesting directions.
Precisely. Success often comes easier when your habits align with your natural inclinations and abilities. The advice is basically try to pick a game or a field where the odds are naturally stacked more in your favor.
Play to your strength.
Yes. Because when you do, you tend to get better faster, which leads to competence, which often brings praise or rewards, which feels good, and boosts motivation, which makes you practice more. It creates this virtuous cycle.
So genes help clarify maybe what areas are worth pouring that hard work into.
That's the idea presented. Not that you can't succeed elsewhere, but your effort might yield better results faster if aligned with your predispositions.
Okay, makes sense. But let's say you've chosen the right habits, you've built the system. What happens inevitably when the novelty wears off? When the habit is established, but it just gets boring? How do you stay motivated for the long haul?
Yes. Boredom. This is such a critical point the text highlights. It talks about the Goldilocks rule first.
Goldilocks.
Yeah, the idea that peak motivation tends to occur when you're working on tasks that are right on the edge of your current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy, maybe about 4% beyond your current skill level. Challenging, but achievable.
Okay, keeps things interesting.
It helps, but the text argues that the single greatest threat to long-term consistency and success isn't actually failure.
Yeah.
It's boredom.
Boredom. That seems counterintuitive if you're aiming for mastery.
Well, think about it. Most people can summon enthusiasm when something is new and exciting. That initial motivation carries you for a while.
Sure.
But successful people, the text argues, athletes, artists, top performers, they feel the boredom too. The difference is they find a way to show up despite the boredom.
They push through it.
They push through it. Mastery requires relentless practice, and practice, by its very nature, involves a ton of repetition, and repetition eventually gets boring. While some things like slot machines or social media feeds use variable rewards to keep you hooked and combat boredom.
Right, that unpredictable hit.
Most valuable long-term habits just don't offer that same kind of instant, unpredictable dopamine rush day after day. Exercising, writing, meditating, the process becomes routine.
So is that the difference the text draws between, like, the amateur and the professional?
That's exactly the distinction. Professionals stick to the schedule. They put in the reps, do the work, even when it feels annoying or painful or just mind-numbingly monotonous. Amateurs, the text suggests, tend to let life, and especially their feelings of boredom or lack of motivation that day, get in the way and dictate their consistency.
Wow.
So, to truly become excellent at something, the text concludes, you basically have to find a way to fall in love with the boredom. You have to embrace the process, the repetition itself.
It completely reframes what consistency means.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to kind of recap this whole deep dive, we've really seen how these tiny atomic habits can compound into massive change over time.
That compounding effect is key.
And why focusing on your systems rather than just the end goals is so much more effective for lasting change.
Right. Fix the inputs.
How identity is really the engine driving our behavior, that North Star.
Who you believe you are shapes what you do.
And then that simple but really powerful 4-step loop.
Right.
Cue, craving, response, reward. Understanding that is like having the habit owner's manual.
It really is. And then we looked at how we can consciously tweak each of those steps, making the good habits obvious, easy, attractive, and satisfying.
While doing the opposite for bad habits, making them invisible, difficult, unattractive, and unsatisfying.
Exactly. It really boils down to understanding these fundamental levers and then applying small, consistent adjustments to your environment and your mindset.
Small changes, big results over time.
That's the core message. And maybe here's something to really mull over as we wrap up. The text strongly suggests that your actions, what you consistently do, are the clearest indication of what you truly value, what you truly want.
Actions speak louder than words.
Essentially, if you say something is a priority, maybe your health or learning a new skill, but your habits consistently don't reflect that, do you actually want it as much as you think? Or do you just like the idea of it?
That's a tough question.
It is. And consider it alongside that relationship between craving, response, and reward. The text hints that maybe the deepest satisfaction doesn't always come from constantly getting what you crave, but perhaps sometimes from reducing the wanting itself. Or maybe recognizing that the real reward, The real satisfaction is often built after the sacrifice, found within the discipline process itself, not just at the finish line.
That is definitely a powerful thought to carry forward. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of building better habits, pulling these insights directly from the source material of Atomic Habits.
My pleasure.
We really hope these principles and strategies help you start creating the changes you want to see in your own life. Until next time.